So welcome back to Communicating Computer Science. In the last unit of the lecture part, I'll show you some templates for lesson plans and also what the purpose of that is, which will feed into our continuous assessment. So a brief one, well, what is this about and what's the purpose? There was a survey asking teachers what they spent their time on. They said they spend most of their time on planning and preparing. If you take into account that they're also teaching a significant fraction of the day, that means they don't usually stop working at 3. And they also say in their perception it takes up too much time to prepare and plan. Now, the survey doesn't go in all details of the reasons. But one thing to point out is that the Ofsted inspections that all schools are very conscious about, because it gives them this rating and so on. It's important for their head teachers' perspective of the school and all that. Ofsted doesn't insist on having lesson plans like this. So they're not going to the teachers and say, oh, you're teaching maths tomorrow with your year 5 students. What is your lesson plan? Can I see that printed out, please? They don't insist on this. At the same time, teachers seem to do it, or the majority of teachers seem to do it. So it seems that it's useful for them, even though they're not forced to write this down. I think there are several good reasons for that. A lesson plan is supposed to cover one individual session. Of course, it's usually, if in the school context, it's tied together through a year or grouped into certain units or topics. The way you write it down is a bit flexible, up to you what works. But there's a few bits of content that are just natural, and they're fairly standard. So what do you do if you have something to do that eats up too much time, but it sounds useful? You try to reuse work that's already done, ideally by other people, but maybe also your own. And so specifically for computing, there's these resources I pointed out in the earlier units that try to do that. So there's the grassroots computing at school, where just teachers share what they created. And then there's this teach computing curriculum that the Raspberry Pi Foundation pushed a lot, where they designed an entire curriculum and tried to make things match up and tie into each other. And all of these work with lesson plans. So they also recognize this as a good way to essentially preserve the knowledge that you get from teaching. So the mindset for you should be, you design a lesson, you come up with great ideas. Now, to make that survive over time, you want to enable other people to run your lesson. That should be the mindset, even though you're potentially not doing that in the spring. You're predominantly doing your own lesson. You should write the plan as if that was another person. And it has the nice side effect that you in 5 months will be the same person, but you still have forgotten some of the things. And so it's useful to pin things down while they're fresh. It's not enough if you just collect your slides and material that you create. You also want to document the whole, the scope and big picture behind your lesson, and maybe some administrative information, just how to organize things. This is a bit tough to do if you haven't delivered it yet. So what people with lesson plans do that they share is they add more information after they've run the lesson. And if people run the lesson again, they may chip in more experience. If you look at the examples from the Teach Computing curriculum, there are many such experience reports, what to pay attention to, what worked well, or what is easy to go wrong, things like that. I made a template for us that is inspired from what has been passed down from the legacy of this module. I try to keep it as simple as possible. We'll look at it in a moment. It shows some overview of the lesson. What are the main aims and how does it link to what Key Stage 3 students are supposed to learn. An important part is to state what you think they already know so that you can tie into this, and teachers or other people taking on your lesson can decide if it's appropriate for them to use it at this point. Learning outcomes is a little different from your aims, so I think in our case, it's not the primary goal potentially to teach new content or new material. But you may still hope that the kids take something from it. The aims here, I think in our context, is fair if you write that from the outreach perspective as well. So you're kind of pretending to be a teacher, but you're also not pretending to be a teacher because we're still in our context of an outreach program at university. All right, the rest this is probably self-explanatory. You try to structure how the lesson is supposed to run and try to give times for that as well. It's good if you practice that and see if the timings are realistic. Anything you can anticipate already about how the group should be organized and these things you should mention. That's tougher to do up front. The assessment part, I want to point out that this is you're not supposed to include an exam in your lesson. Assessment can be of very different kind. It can be a small questionnaire that you do with the kids. So a little thing you could do is you ask them about a topic at the beginning and then again at the end. And you can test if something has changed in them. Either they've learned something or they've understood a concept that they didn't grasp before, or their emotional attitude towards the topic has changed. These are things you can do. So I think this is more of list opportunities for that. How could you assess that you had some impact? You can start thinking about this. That's why it's on the lesson plan. This is what the template looks like. I don't want to repeat what I just said. The only thing that wasn't on this bullet list is I split it into an overview that should really not become much longer than it currently is, half a page, showing you the big picture, what is the different blocks of each component of the lesson. And then the detailed lesson plan tells you how to do each part. So maybe this is, what are you doing, just very briefly, and this is how do you orchestrate it. You can structure your lesson in very different ways. That will depend on your topic. So maybe you will probably usually start with some, hi, I'm so-and-so, and this is what I'll do. And you probably want to wrap up with some plenary talk as well, because that's your chance to drive the main point home and make sure that people are focused again on what you want them to take from the lesson. What's going on in between depends on what best works. It can be split between several activities with maybe some explainer in between, or maybe it's just one long thing where they explore and you walk around and try to help the groups out individually. That's up to you. Now, so far, this was just in general about lesson plans. Specifically for our assessment, the dates, etc., I think are all on the website or Canvas, but let me just mention it again. So early December is the due date. We'll meet soon-ish to finalize the topic selection. So keep thinking. You're not tied into whatever topic you've used so far. As soon as the essay is swapped out of main memory, you can try to think about what lesson topic you're most excited about. My suggestion would be to start from an activity. If you want to go back to this, start from the red parts, because it's usually easier to design some learning points around a fun activity that some would make sense, as opposed to the other way around. If you think of some specific kind of thing you want to teach, and then coming up with a really exciting activity can be challenging. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's easier because we have the luxury that we don't have to teach a specific curriculum, right? We're free to do whatever we feel is engaging and fun for the kids and fulfills our goals, motivating them for computer science. So you can be free to choose the topic so that you can make a nice activity out of it. And so in a way, the topic can come as an afterthought. I'll haunt you on Teams, I think, to discuss in between, just to see that the lesson is roughly pitching the right level and so on. I have a bit more experience now of what might work, so I hope that can be useful. And then shortly after you submit your thing, we'll meet again to have a little round of appreciation, so where everyone can tell the others what they did. Because the other part will be, as I said, between you and me maybe, but you're mostly working on your own. And I think it's nice to bring the group together to see what is in the portfolio, what have people come up with. You will discuss together what topics everyone's taking a little bit. Is that next week or a week after? Well, soonish, a week after. But often there's quite a difference between what you started planning with and what ends up in your lesson plan after pinning things down. So this is the second reason for the lesson plan in our context. It forces you to make everything explicit. What do you want to do? And that's a reality check often in terms of the time. Our lessons will be 45 minutes. Should be somewhere on the website. I don't know if I put it on the slides anywhere. So that's not a lot of time. Get everyone back to their seats saying hi. You're basically left with half an hour for actually doing something. It's quite short, so you have to be to the point with your preparation. All right. Yeah, try to manage your time. I hope that works. What you have to submit is the lesson plan, but it's a few things around it as well. So any material you need for the lesson should also be part of that. Again, I'm forcing you to think of this well ahead of the actual taster days so that it's clear early on if your lesson is realistic. And the last part is something I think we should advertise our lessons on our website. And so I thought it's a good idea to outsource that to you. Write a little paragraph, like 5 to 10 lines. I don't know how many words that works out to, 100 maybe. Not too long, just a very short sales pitch. So it doesn't need to explain in detail what you're doing. It's supposed to sound engaging for the teachers and parents. That's the goal. And so I hope that we can put that on the website so it just looks a bit more, maybe, yeah, looks more engaging or looks more concrete. And you can showcase your work. That reminds me, I have permission from some of the students from last year to put their lesson online. And but I haven't done that out of lack of time. There's no other reason. So I'll try to do that as soon as possible so you can have a look at those. They basically did the same structure, except that this last part was up to me. So you can take some inspiration. I also didn't want to bring this out too early, or at least not point you too much to it, because I don't want to anchor you too much onto what other people have already done. The more creative or more fun lessons come out if you freely explore. So don't feel like you have to stay close or very far in either way from the last sessions. I'll leave this to you to read for you, the marking scheme. It's the same on the website. I'll leave that for you for later. it's a mixture of things. I don't know. You see that the majority is on the teaching materials, and how you plan the activity, if that is suitable in terms of the content that you're covering with the activity. That's the main thing, and then the rest is still 40%, but not as heavy. If you want more inspiration for lesson plans, there's this Teach Computing curriculum. I think you have to register and pretend to be a teacher at least. I did that because I think you can also say you're teaching teachers, so that counts. And if you want to see some of those, you can look at the list of lessons online. I can send you individual ones if you want to have a look at this. I don't think it's secret in any way. They might just not want students to have access to it if there's questions with answers in there, for example. So my point is here, this can be a good guide for how much you can cover in one school lesson. That's what they're supposed to do. It's broken down into fairly small pieces. Now, so it can be a good guide for how to write these lesson plans and how much to put in. There's some differences, of course, because they set out to cover exactly what's in the national curriculum, and we don't care as much. So you have more freedom. Yeah, that's a caveat to point out, the unit guides. So they structure the content into years, and then each year consists of units, and the units consist of lessons. And so some things are documented at the unit level. So the equivalent for us will be you're doing one lesson, but some of the comments that we would want in the lesson plan are documented for the unit. Keep that in mind. All right, for the rest of today, I thought it's best to do this on an example where it doesn't count. So I asked you to have a look at this, this course involving these alien pictures that I also printed out. It's just an example for an activity. So we can pretend we're doing this for year 9s. Maybe the aliens are a bit childish for them, for that age group, but why not? And so let's do this on the actual template and try to figure out a lesson plan for this. Now, by the time you write your own lesson plan, hopefully you have a deeper understanding of what you want to do than what you might have gotten from having a brief look at this online stuff. But let's give it a go. So let's do teams of 2 if that roughly works out, or maybe 3. Just so that you can take some material where there's interesting stuff in there, but now the question is, how do you squeeze that into 45 minutes?